Kellan Lawson knew he shouldn't have touched the alien plant, but curiosity had a way of getting the better of him. Now he lay on a slab in the medical bay of the Virellian cruiser, his right hand swollen to the size of a football, his veins tracing angry red lines up his arm. 3 Virellian medics loomed over him, murmuring to each other in low, liquid tones, their translucent skin shifting colors like oil on water. "Is he deteriorating?" asked the tallest one, Grell. "It spreads too swiftly," said the smaller one, Vel, "tissue necrosis imminent." Kellan shifted painfully, his voice a rasp. "Hey, I'm still here, you know? And I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk about my arm like it's a Thanksgiving turkey." Grell leaned in, his 4 eyes blinking asynchronously. "Human Kellan, we have analyzed your infection. It is a virulent strain. Terminal." Kellan blinked at him. "Terminal? You're telling me I'm gonna die because I brushed a weed?" Vel nodded, his pale hands wringing together. "The Spora lux is known to us. It has no cure. No Virellian, no Jernak, no Threxin survives contact." Kellan grunted, gritting his teeth as another wave of heat crashed through him. He glanced at the array of glowing tools and humming machines around him, all sterile, advanced, and obviously useless. He thought about it for a second, then asked, "Have you guys even tried antibiotics?" Vel tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Antibiotics? You know, the stuff we use back on Earth when we get infections? Pills, shots, that kind of thing." Grell turned to the 3rd medic, a silent figure named Sale. Sale tapped a screen rapidly, pulling up information on human medical treatments. The screen flashed colors, then went dark. "There is no record of such a method," said Sale flatly. Kellan tried to sit up but winced and lay back down. "Of course there isn't. You guys are looking at it from your own biology. Just get me the right kind of antibiotics. Broad spectrum if you got them." Vel hesitated. "You were suggesting a compound designed for bacterial resistance?" "Exactly," Kellan said, voice strained. "I've seen worse infections back home, trust me. One time my cousin got bit by a raccoon. His arm looked worse than this, and he lived." The medics conferred quietly. Grell finally turned back to him. "We have synthesized basic bacterial treatments for study purposes. It is untested on your species. Better than lying here waiting for my arm to fall off," Kellan said. "Shoot me up." The Virellians worked quickly, preparing a shot filled with a shimmering blue liquid. Vel approached him, holding the injector gingerly. "May cause rapid systemic shock," Vel warned. "Don't care," Kellan said through gritted teeth. "Do it." The injection burned like fire. Kellan yelled, his back arching off the slab. The medics restrained him gently but firmly. His vision blurred, sweat pouring down his face. But after a few agonizing minutes, the pain began to dull. The red streaks in his arm slowly stopped creeping. The swelling seemed to stabilize. Grell looked at the monitors, then at Kellan. Vital signs improving. Infection containment probable. Kellan gave a weak laugh. "Told you. Antibiotics." He passed out before he could say anything more. Kellan awoke hours later in a different room, one far more comfortable, with soft lighting and a strange but not unpleasant floral scent in the air. His arm was bandaged, and a heavy, dull ache had replaced the searing pain. Grell sat nearby, studying him with a strange intensity. "You recovered at a rate we did not anticipate," Grell said quietly. "I'm still pretty banged up," Kellan croaked, trying to sit up but only managing a slight shift. "But alive." Vel entered carrying a tray with a cup of something steaming. "Nutrient broth," he explained. "Your body expended significant energy combating the pathogen." Kellan sipped cautiously. It tasted like a mix between chicken soup and mango juice but went down easily. "You altered our perception," Vel said, sitting carefully across from him. "We believed the Spora lux untreatable." Kellan set the cup down, breathing heavily. "Well, turns out sometimes the old ways work. You guys are way ahead of us in tech. But sometimes simple beats fancy." Sale entered then, holding a data pad. "We have begun reevaluation of infection protocols across multiple species." Kellan gave a weak chuckle. "Glad I could help. Just, maybe next time, don't assume death is the only outcome." Grell nodded solemnly. "We owe you a debt." Kellan shook his head. No debts. Just maybe keep a first aid kit around. He tried to laugh but ended up coughing instead. Vel immediately scanned him, frowning slightly. Residual pulmonary stress, Vel said. Expected after systemic trauma. Grell stood. You must rest further. Movement restricted. Kellan didn't argue. His body felt like it had been through a blender. He closed his eyes, letting the low hum of the ship lull him into sleep. 3 days later, Kellan was able to walk short distances with the help of a Virellian design mobility frame. It was clunky and a bit embarrassing, but he was grateful for it. His arm remained bandaged and Vel insisted on daily inspections. On the 5th day, Kellan sat in the ship's observation lounge, staring out at a swirling nebula when Vel approached. We have isolated the bacterial component of the Spora lux infection, Vel said, sitting beside him. Preliminary tests show high susceptibility to multiple antibiotics. Good, Kellan said, flexing his hand slightly, wincing at the stiffness. Means you can save more people. Vel hesitated. You have changed our understanding of resilience. We considered adaptability a disadvantage. Your species demonstrates otherwise. Kellan shrugged. Adapt or die. That's the human way. Grell entered then, carrying what looked like a ceremonial sash. He draped it with careful movements over Kellan's shoulders. You are now recognized as a friend of the Virellian Confederacy, Grell said formally. Kellan blinked. Thanks. Vel smiled, a rare expression on a Virellian face. It is not a trivial title. Kellan leaned back, feeling the weight of the past week settle over him. He was still weak, still healing, but alive in a way that felt raw and real. The Virellians had saved his life, and he had saved theirs in a way. As the ship glided silently through the stars, Kellan allowed himself a small, tired smile. Maybe he wasn't just some random guy from Ohio anymore. Maybe he was something a little more. The galaxy was bigger and weirder than he had ever imagined. But one thing was clear. Sometimes the simplest solutions could change everything. And sometimes all it took was asking a stupid question. Have you tried antibiotics yet? 2 days after Kellan was awarded the Virellian ceremonial sash, he found himself sitting in a sterile classroom aboard the cruiser, a thick tablet resting on his lap. The room smelled faintly of ozone and something like cinnamon. Vel stood at the front, gesturing at a holographic display that shifted between charts of alien pathogens and human microbiota. Your species' immune system exhibits unpredictable responses to external stimuli, Vel said, tapping a translucent finger against the floating images. We request further elucidation. Kellan leaned back in the chair, feeling the faint pull of healing tendons in his arm. You're asking me to explain how human immune systems work? I'm not even a doctor. I just know what I've picked up from living through a bunch of bad decisions. Grell, perched awkwardly on a stool designed for beings with triple-jointed limbs, lowered his voice. Your experiential knowledge is valued. All right, Kellan said, rubbing his forehead. But you owe me a decent cup of coffee after this. Vel blinked, evidently filing that under future cultural research. He expanded the display, showing a rotating model of a white blood cell. Start here, Vel prompted. Explain. Kellan squinted. That's a white blood cell. They're like the bouncers of the body. See something bad? They beat it up. Grell's eyes shifted from lavender to a curious teal. Physical violence within cellular structures? Figure of speech, Kellan said. They engulf and destroy invaders. Bacteria, viruses, whatever shouldn't be there. Vel adjusted the hologram to show a time lapse of bacterial colonies being overwhelmed by neutrophils. Your internal defense mechanisms are notably aggressive. Yeah, and sometimes they go overboard, Kellan said. That's why we get fevers and inflammation. It's the body trying too hard to fix itself. Grell tapped his chin, a gesture Kellan had learned meant deep consideration. Self-damage as a byproduct of protection. Exactly. Balance is key, Kellan said. Too little response, you get sick. Too much, you get things like autoimmune diseases. Vel activated a secondary display showing human medical protocols. Your treatments often aim to moderate these responses, right? Antibiotics for infections, steroids for inflammation, antivirals for viruses. We throw what we can at the problem and hope the body figures the rest out. Grell's gaze sharpened. You hope. Kellan shrugged. Medicine's part science, part art, part crossed fingers. Neither Vel nor Grell responded immediately. They stared at him as if he had just confessed to navigating a ship by tossing a coin. After a long silence, Vel cleared his throat. Your methodologies operate with significant uncertainty. Yeah, welcome to humanity, Kellan said. We make it work. Grell gestured toward a smaller device on the table, where a tray of petri dishes sat under a protective shield. We initiated trials using your antibiotic suggestions. Results are inconsistent. Kellan stood, walking over carefully. His legs still ached, but he managed. He peered through the shield at the dishes. Some showed clear zones where bacteria had been wiped out. Others teemed with stubborn colonies. Yeah, that's about right, he said. Some bugs are tougher. You need to match the antibiotic to the bacteria. Vel looked genuinely troubled. You advocate personalized treatment for each infection? When possible. Otherwise, you try broad-spectrum stuff first. If that doesn't work, you narrow it down. Grell exchanged a glance with Vel. Your medical practice is far more improvisational than anticipated. Kellan grinned. Improvisation's how we survived everything from saber-toothed tigers to the common cold. The classroom door hissed open and Sale entered, holding a datapad close to his chest. We have a situation, he said without preamble. Vel turned. Explain. Sale hesitated, his skin cycling from pale blue to murky green. 2 Virellian crew members exposed to Sporolux while retrieving samples. Early-stage symptoms manifesting. Kellan's stomach twisted. You didn't quarantine the site? We believed protective measures sufficient, Sale said stiffly. No such thing as sufficient with this stuff, Kellan said, already moving toward the door. Take me there. Vel fell into step beside him. You are not yet fully recovered. Doesn't matter, Kellan said. You need someone who knows how to fight infections. Within minutes, they reached the isolation ward. 2 Virellians lay on beds behind a shimmering energy field. Their skin shimmered with fever and their breathing was shallow. Kellan crossed his arms. How long since exposure? Approximately 3 hours, Sale said. Good. Early enough, Kellan muttered. He turned to Vel. Get me the antibiotics we used on me. Same dosage adjusted for Virellian body mass. Vel hesitated. Their physiology differs. Yeah, but the infection's bacterial, Kellan said. If we don't act fast, it's gonna spread like wildfire. Vel nodded and hurried off. Grell stood silently nearby, observing the patients. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture rigid. Kellan approached the energy field, studying the patients. Both twitched occasionally, their hands clenching and unclenching. Can the field be lowered long enough to administer treatment? He asked. The risk is considerable, Grell said. Yeah, well, so is doing nothing. Vel returned, a small tray of injectors in hand. Kellan grabbed a pair of gloves from a nearby dispenser and nodded at Sale. Drop the field for 6 seconds. No more. Sale input a code and the barrier shimmered out of existence. Kellan moved quickly, administering the first dose into the soft tissue at the base of the neck, then the second. Before he could even step back, the field snapped back into place. Almost immediately, the patient's breathing began to ease. Vel checked a scanner. Vital signs stabilizing. Kellan sagged against the wall, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. Told you. Antibiotics. Grell stepped forward. You acted with unacceptable personal risk. Yeah, well, Kellan said, wiping sweat from his forehead, someone had to. Hours later, Kellan sat in the observation lounge again, nursing a cup of something that might have been tea. Vel joined him quietly, carrying a small device. What's that? Kellan asked. A token of appreciation, Vel said, placing it on the table. It unfolded into a miniature holographic garden, complete with tiny moving creatures. Kellan leaned in. Cool. Vel hesitated, then said, your intervention prevented a potential outbreak among the crew. Good, Kellan said, sipping his drink. But you need better protocols. Hazard suits, Deccan procedures, antibiotic stockpiles. Grell entered, hands clasped behind his back as always. We have initiated revisions based on your recommendations. About time, Kellan said. You can't treat everything like it's a math problem. Biology's messy. Vel watched the holographic creatures flit among the tiny trees. Your adaptability defies our predictive models. That's the thing about humans, Kellan said. We don't fit in neat little boxes. They sat in silence for a while, watching the holographic garden shift through simulated seasons. Later that evening, Kellan was summoned to the central medical bay. The two patients had regained consciousness. They blinked up at him, their skin no longer fevered, their breathing steady. One of them, a young Virellian with iridescent markings, whispered something in their native tongue. Vel translated. They wish to know how you knew. Kellan chuckled softly. I didn't. I guessed. That's what we do. The young Virellian reached out weakly, brushing Kellan's hand in a gesture of gratitude. As he left the medical bay, Kellan realized he was limping a little less. His arm moved a little easier. Maybe he was healing in more ways than one. The stars outside the observation windows burned steady and bright. Somewhere out there, whole worlds waited, full of dangers and wonders. And maybe, just maybe, humanity had a place among them, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were stubborn enough to survive anything. Even themselves. The morning cycle aboard the Virellian cruiser began with a soft chime that rippled through the corridors. Kellan sat upright in the medbay's recovery wing, stretching his shoulders gingerly. His arm, while sore, had regained most of its function. Vel entered, carrying a small case, his skin a calm shade of pale silver. You are cleared for full activity, Vel said, setting the case beside Kellan. However, the commander requests your assistance before we return you to Earth. Kellan raised an eyebrow. Assistance with what? Vel pressed a panel, revealing a compact bioanalyzer. A secondary outbreak. Not of Sporolux, but a different pathogen isolated from the same planet. Kellan groaned. You guys really need to stop picking up souvenirs. Vel's fingers drummed lightly on the case. This strain shows resistance to standard Virellian treatments. You are uniquely suited to advise. Kellan slid off the bed, testing his weight. I guess I'm the unofficial infection guy now. They walked down a narrow passageway toward a containment chamber deeper within the medbay. The air grew cooler, and faint hisses from the environmental regulators echoed around them. Inside the chamber, two Virellians stood behind a transparent barrier, suited in heavier bio-armor. A third figure lay on a diagnostic table inside, motionless save for a faint twitching in one limb. Kellan peered through the barrier. What's the story? Vel adjusted a nearby monitor. Symptoms began 20 hours ago after exposure to soil samples. Rapid lymphatic swelling, febrile response, neurological spasms. Kellan leaned closer, noting the blotchy discolorations along the patient's sides. Any cultures done? Preliminary analysis suggests a gram-positive bacterium, Vel said. But it's exhibiting atypical motility. Kellan frowned. You mean it's moving like a gram-negative? Affirmative. Kellan tapped his fingers against the barrier. That's weird. You said the standard treatments failed. Vel nodded. The colony resisted beta-lactams and quinolone analogs. Kellan chewed his lip, thinking. Did you try anything bacteriostatic? Vel's skin darkened a shade. We employed bactericidal agents exclusively. Kellan pulled back from the barrier. You're nuking it when you should be slowing it down. Give the immune system a chance to catch up. Grell entered then, carrying a sealed tray. Without a word, he set it down and opened it, revealing a selection of human antibiotics synthesized from Kellan's earlier suggestions. Kellan sorted through them, pulling out a vial labeled erythromycin. This one. It doesn't kill the bacteria outright, it stops it from growing. Let the patient's body do the heavy lifting. Vel hesitated. The risk of incomplete suppression is better than killing off the competition and leaving superbugs behind, Kellan finished. Trust me. Grell handed the vial to one of the suited medics. Within minutes, the antibiotic was introduced into the patient's foreline. Kellan watched, arms folded, as the monitors traced a slow but steady improvement, fever dropping, muscle spasms subsiding. Vel exhaled a sound that could almost be called a sigh. Improvement detected. Kellan allowed himself a small nod. Sometimes it's not about fighting harder. It's about fighting smarter. Grell studied him. Your species' approach to disease is paradoxical. Yeah, well, trial and error built our civilization, Kellan said. Mostly error. 3 hours later, after confirming the patient's stabilization, Kellan sat in the galley with a bowl of something that resembled oatmeal mixed with algae. Grell sat opposite him, his movements unusually still. You have altered our medical doctrine, Grell said. Happy to help, Kellan said between spoonfuls. Although next time, maybe skip the part where I almost die first. Grell tilted his head. Would you consider formal collaboration with the Confederacy? Kellan raised an eyebrow. As in, a job offer. Advisory role, Grell clarified. Short-term deployments. Infection control specialization. Kellan leaned back, considering. I'm not exactly a doctor. You possess critical experiential insight, Grell said. Before Kellan could respond, Vel entered carrying a slim folder. He placed it on the table. Patient has emerged from critical state, Vel said. Full neurological function retained. Kellan grinned. Good news for once. Vel remained standing. We request your final input before concluding your engagement. Kellan wiped his hands on a napkin. Shoot. Vel tapped the folder. We have cataloged all pathogens from the planet Ferric's surface. We seek a classification system based on human models. Kellan flipped through the folder, scanning the data. You guys lump everything by molecular structure. Humans do it by how it hurts us. Vel looked puzzled. Explain. Kellan pointed at a chart. Like this one. Causes lung damage? We'd call it a respiratory pathogen. That one? Skin infections. That one? Bloodstream invader. Grell leaned forward, intrigued. Categorization by clinical manifestation rather than molecular composition. Exactly, Kellan said. It's messy, but it makes treatment faster. If it acts like pneumonia, you treat it like pneumonia, even if under the microscope it looks like spaghetti. Vel nodded slowly. Efficiency over taxonomy. Kellan laughed. You say that like it's a bad thing. They spent the next 2 hours adjusting the database, reclassifying the pathogens by symptoms rather than just microscopic traits. By the end, Vel's skin had turned a steady, contemplative blue. As Kellan stood to leave, Vel handed him a small data crystal. A copy of the revised database. Acknowledgement of your contribution. Kellan tucked it into his pocket. Thanks. I guess Earth gets a little smarter out of this too. Grell inclined his head. You have shifted perspectives across multiple disciplines. Kellan stretched, feeling the stiffness in his joints. All in a day's work for a guy with a basic first aid certification. Later, as the ship hovered over a neutral docking station orbiting a small moon, Kellan stood by the airlock, a simple duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Sale approached with a small metallic cube. A parting gift, Sale said, pressing it into Kellan's hand. Kellan examined it. The cube unfolded into a miniature projector, displaying a hologram of a Spora lux flower, except now, it was annotated with treatment protocols, recovery timelines, and survival statistics. He chuckled. You guys really know how to make a sentimental medical chart. Sale's mouth curved upward, a rare Virellian smile. We adapt. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Kellan turned back one last time, facing Vel, Grell, and Sale assembled together. Don't pick up any more mysterious plants without gloves, Kellan said. Vel clasped his hands together. We shall take greater precautions, Grell added, and reconsider assumptions regarding incurability. Kellan gave a lazy salute. Glad to hear it. As he stepped through the airlock onto the station, the heavy doors sealing behind him, he felt a strange lightness in his chest. The galaxy was still full of things that could kill you, sure. But now it was also full of beings who had learned, however reluctantly, that sometimes the simplest questions could save lives. And sometimes all it took was one stubborn human who refused to believe in no cure.